Hey guys, Chris Odell here from Datsusara. Today I was going to dye one of my own hemp combat gis, and people always ask, can you dye them, and how difficult is it, and will it fade, all these things. I've been dyeing my own gis for years, since before I had a gi company, and so I'm going to show you guys how I do it. This is really the one method I found that works really great. Things don't fade, the colors look awesome. First thing you want to do is probably pick up some good Procyon dyes from Dharma Trading Company. I'll put the link here on the video for you. That is the place I go, especially for things that'll work well with hemp. Hemp does take well to dye, but it's still better if you get the Procyon dyes and don't get like crappy stuff you're going to buy in the grocery store. It's going to work a lot better. So I've already pre-washed the clothing that I'm putting in there, and it's going to be gis, and I'm going to throw in some t-shirts and some other stuff just for fun. I pre-washed it with this stuff that you can buy also at Dharma. You don't really have to do that, but you want to get it clean. You want to get any kind of grease, dirt, oil, anything off of there. You leave the fabric kind of wet, and just put it aside. And then the next thing you really got to do is just get whatever dyes that you picked up. For me, I'm doing Imperial Purple today, so we're going to go for a nice deep kind of Roman purple deal here. It should look pretty good. I'm going to kind of overdo it and use a little more dye than they even recommend, but you can look at their website and they'll tell you exactly how much you should need. For darker colors, you generally need more, but like I said, I'm going to over dye because I'm putting a few extra things in. I'm just going to do a whole tub's worth. So the trick is you kind of you want to make basically a paste out of this stuff first. So I'm going to put it all in some kind of bowl. I suggest glass just because it's easy to clean, essentially. You can get it right off of there and it's not going to absorb any of the dye. You can reuse it later for whatever you want. You want to get some hot water, about a cup. I'm waiting for it to get pretty warm. Kids helping me out here. This is Kira, everybody. Fascinated by these things. Good enough. Alright. Thanks, sweetie. Okay. So, it's kind of like, well, if you're really good at mixing wasabi for your sushi and the soy sauce, this is also how you do it. So, you basically kind of you don't want to just dump in a whole bunch of water all at once because it'll just get clumpy. You kind of want to put a little bit and just turn it more into a paste slowly, and then you keep adding more water as you go along. Otherwise you just end up with a bunch of clumps and it's really a pain in the butt to get it all to mix up properly then. So yeah, you need more than that though. Like I said, I'm doing a lot more dye than really is called for, so it'll take a while. Anyway, we'll check back in a minute. Alright, so next step is, and we have our slurry, essentially. I've turned it into a nice, thick, kind of guapi slurry, they call it. Next step is going to be, I'm going to add everything, just kind of, a little bit loosely, whatever. That's one of our prototype hemp towels coming out later this year. I think you guys are going to like them. T-shirt, I know, I'm throwing a red t-shirt in there. This is a Drunken Taoist t-shirt. And I love the shirt, although I'm curious, I think it would be a little bit better with some purple in there, so that's not experimental. We'll see how that goes. Whoa, not yet, kid. Alright. And then these are some prototype shorts that I had made up, but they're white, and if you guys know me, I really don't wear white stuff. I don't like it. So, same thing, one of the gis, jacket, gi pants, and so you want to get all that in there, and then pretty much start her up and wait for it to get about as full as it's going to. You may want to overfill it just a little bit to give the fabric more room to stay under the water in the dye. Once that's filled up, then we're going to put the dye in, and we'll do that next. Alright, and I forgot to mention that actually really before you throw the fabric in, better just let the tub fill up empty. But once you know it's going to fill and not drain, you want to add your salt that they recommend. I'm doing a whole tub load, so I'm just putting 20, well, it's probably overdoing it, it's 25 pounds, but yeah, I'm doing a little bit less than that. Anyway, you kind of need the salt in there. It's sort of important. They say non-iodized, probably get away with iodized, but I recommend non-iodized. If you get the sauce on Amazon, super cheap. Alright, so you pour that stuff in there. I'm just doing it right on top of the fabric since I screwed up and waited too long. That's most of it. That's probably about 20 pounds in there of that. and we'll continue to fill the tub. But like I said, try and mix that in first before you put the fabric in there. Okay, so we got all the salt dissolved in here. I had to do a little bit of actually adding extra water myself because unfortunately this is harder with newer washing machines because they tend to stay, they won't fill up really completely. You can't overfill them to get enough water in there. And then I also can't get it to agitate while I'm pouring the dye in, which is something that I prefer because you kind of want the dye to mix in really evenly. You don't want to, hit hard on one part of the fabric and make it splotchy. But, like I said, you look at the directions, it'll tell you some really extreme measures to keep things perfect. I do this kind of rough and a little bit probably sloppy, and it usually still comes out pretty dang good. So I'm just going to keep this spinning, try and get the rest of the slurry in there. And then the other thing I got to do now is I usually get another spoon, or really if I can find a stick in the yard, is usually the way to do this. So you want to kind of plunge everything down in there as you're keeping it moving. And this is before, eventually you're just going to turn it back on, let it agitate, but I just like to kind of manually make sure that everything's got a good soaking while that dye's kind of permeating the water and the fabric there for a minute. And then we're going to set it to agitate, and the real trick here is going to be that you want to catch it from ever draining until you're ready. Darker fabrics, I think they say take at least a half hour. I tend to let it sit for a good hour, maybe more, just agitating. And to do that, you're going to probably set a timer, and just every 15 minutes or so, either reset your cycle back or just somehow make sure it doesn't drain out and go to the next cycle. Nope, sweet, out. Okay, and then we'll check in with you here in a minute. The next section. Oh, and sometimes with this leftover stuff, I'll add more water and keep getting it in there. Okay, and then here we have the soda ash. Sorry, I didn't show you the bag. For this big of a load, I'm doing about 2.5 cups. That's also in the directions that you see online. Same thing here. You kind of want to turn it into like essentially like a slurry, sort of. And by the way, some of these things, I don't know, they're not exactly super toxic, but enough that you don't want to be inhaling it, so be careful when handling. I took my gloves off for a minute because I had to use the computer here too, but just watch yourself. Don't let the kitties get into it, that kind of thing. Anyhow, so I'm going to make this into like another slurry, and then after it's agitated for at least a good 15-20 minutes, you're going to add this as sort of a dye fixer, and then you're going to let it sit and agitate for a long, long time for good results. Alright, so I stopped this thing after about 20 or so minutes of agitating, getting the dye mixed in there, and I made that slurry of the soda ash that we mentioned. You want to kind of, it'll tend to settle, so you kind of want to stir it up a bit right before you're going to pour this in. You really want to try to make sure this hits evenly, so I'm going to once again try to just spin this a little bit. Now, they recommend that you add this over a long, like 15-minute period. Who's got time for that? So, so I just add it all kind of in right away and try to keep it moving. And so far, I haven't had any bad results because of that. It's been fine. Once again, if you're patient and you really want the best results, do follow the directions exactly as you see them on the Dharma Trading site. But like I said, if you want to cut a few corners here and there, go ahead. The main things you don't want to cut corners with are the time amount and the amount of dye or the actual soda ash that you use. So the amounts you use, I feel, are a little more important than exactly how you mix them in, as long as you kind of keep things moving when you do it. Okay, and then the next step is just to keep this sucker, in this case, I'm going to try and let it agitate for about an hour if I can keep resetting this, but again, easier with an older washer. This one, I'm afraid it's going to try and drain on me in between cycles. That's really going to suck. So, if worse comes to worse, you've got that kind of situation, what I might do is just let it just soak. I might sit here and stir it by hand for a while and just let it sit and not agitate, just soak for an hour. And then we'll be on to the next step. Alright, so it did agitate for another 20-30 minutes for me, but this thing, I tried to then reset it and keep it, going, or at least soaking in water. Didn't work out very well. It soaked by itself for a while and drained out. Like I said again, old washer, probably a lot easier to do this. However, it sat for a while in the dye, And then, as you can see, I just left it wet in the dye. Now, you can see how dark that is right now. It's almost black to my eyes. You can barely tell there's purple going on there. So it's soaking in really good. But once we rinse it off, it's gonna come back out to the color that probably, if you did it right, that you planned on it being. So next thing I'm gonna do is a couple of just cold water rinse cycles. And then after that, you're going to do a hot water rinse cycle with your same, either this professional detergent that they sell at Dharma, or you can probably just get away with regular stuff. I find you get slightly better results with this stuff. Anyway, so that's the next step, and then it's just on to the dryer. Okay, so here we are, taking it out. After a few washes, you want to wash it till things can come pretty much clear. You don't see any dye coming out in the water. And as you can see, pretty darn rich purple here. We'll get a better shot of it after we get it out of the dryer, and you can just go ahead and dry on kind of a normal setting at this point. Alright, so now we're just getting everything out of the dryer. Like I said, regular drying functions fine, just normal setting. Obviously geese take a little longer to dry than the rest of the stuff, so geese still a little damp. But yeah, you can see here, came out real nice and deep purple. Just how I wanted. So even though we had some complications there, these Procyon dyes work really well, especially on any kind of hemp gear. So check it out. Good stuff. Hey guys, just figured I'd throw this on outside really quick too, so you can kind of see a little bit better how the color came out and versus where it started at, which is this white down here. So anyway, yes, you can dye hemp gi quite easily. Just use the right dyes and do the process correctly.